512, the Black Death, or what was be more scientifically known as the bubonic plague. You watched yesterday the video of the story of all of us, incorporated the time period with the Black Death. The Mongols, they were an Asian conquering land. They were really responsible for getting the bubonic plague spreading at such a widespread way because they were catapulting with their trebuchets and mangonels those dead bodies that were infected, and then that way go over the wall into the cities and spread the disease faster. Then as merchants were doing trade, they were being exposed to the disease mainly by rats having fleas on them. Then when they went on ships, those rats went with them, the fleas as well, and then those fleas bit more and more people. How was the Catholic Church's role? Was definitely people were going for prayer, going to their religious leaders for answers, and they really didn't have an answer other than prayer. And then many of the Catholic leaders decided to put the dead bodies in the rivers to stop the contamination they thought within the cities, but obviously that infected the water sources. Many others were looking for a group to blame, the Jews, since they do not believe in the Messiah as the Christians do, being Jesus. And they were many of the people making a lot of money in the towns with their businesses. They were used as a scapegoat and blamed and attacked unfairly for nothing that they had anything to do with it. So it swept through Europe in 1347 to 1351, came from Central and Eastern Asia, like we said, from the Mongolians and the rats. So this picture kind of is a funny description where you can add the images with words if you so choose, if you don't like to draw. From the rats, then the fleas on the rats then bit the humans. It was caused by many different plagues. The bubonic is the most common. You're going to see a swell of buboes that appeared on the victims' bodies. They're going to attack your lymph nodes. You know, when you go to the doctor's office and they often put their fingers underneath your chin, around your neck area, or even under your arms, around your armpits, because those are where your lymph nodes are and they hold infection. And so these very large boils of kinds would form there that were infected with the disease. It also mutated and formed into being what we call an airborne disease, where literally just breathing or being in the air, same air as someone that had contracted it within 24 hours, could cause you to start having the buboes and the other symptoms. There were so many people dying so fast they couldn't even have ceremonies, and the bodies were often being burned, which again then puts the infection into the air. Thousands of villages would just be abandoned. People would just leave because they didn't know what else to do, because obviously they realized, being in close proximity to it was causing some of the contamination. So the buboes was the first symptom. Now, obviously, that's a modern picture that you're looking at on the left. You can still contract buboes, but we don't have any documentation of bubonic plagues to any degree in this time period. We think it was just really an early form of influenza, but now we have natural immunities that allow us not to contract such serious illnesses with it, and in our modern times, we have different kinds of medication, sanitary living conditions, vitamin C, washing our hands, and also being able to be vaccinated if we so choose. Then you would also get the blackened of the fingers. They call that being septic, and almost 100% mortality rate if you contracted it. So the Black Death, you can see, was not just like the dismal, somber idea of wearing black like to a funeral. It was also because you literally turn black. The manor system is going to be hit hard because we know that peasants and serfs were the ones that were desperately needed to do the labor. And now that they were dying in mass numbers and they were, that idea of supply and demand, the supply of them was very low. The demand for their work was very highly wanted. So manor lords were willing to pay serfs and peasants to come to their manor to work. Well, obviously, if they have to pay them to work, it's going to change that whole structure we've been learning about with feudalism. And some of the cities and industries are going to start to develop more because all these people are like, why should I be on a manor if these cities have now traded and started to make goods and they could go live there and work, much less time. So really the serfs and peasants, lived in such close conditions. I always compare it to like your family. One person gets the flu, usually it's going to spread to 3 or 4, whoever many people live in your home, because you're living in such close conditions. But it's really going to push people into the cities and start more modernness. So imagine you're walking down the street and you just see body after body being pulled out of their home. Everyone lived in very close proximity to one another, and that made it transfer even faster. And then you sneezed. That might be the simple symptom, just like we have the common flu today. Now, the doctor had an interesting way of dressing. You can see almost like a beak-like mask he would wear. That was because they really thought breathing in caused a lot of the contamination. Well, obviously, that was some truth. But if you obviously have to breathe no matter what, and whether or not you smell it in your nose right away is not going to change if you got it. This kind of sharp item that he has in his hand would have been used to pierce into the blood vessels to either do bloodletting, where you would exchange the blood with someone else's. Also, they would use it to pierce into the babos to excrete the fluid from it. Mr. Dr. Pimple Popper's favorite thing, huh? Medieval cures, they did lots of different things. None of them were really scientifically proven. Swelling could be softened. They kind of make a paste made of figs, which is a kind of fruit, onions, and butter. And then they'd open the sores with a knife and insert the mixture. They would have probably taken some of the moisture out, but it's already in the bloodstream. They would also take a live frog, because frogs are amphibians and they absorb water into their skin when they're in the water. That's why they can live outside of the water and be able to move around even when they're not in the water. Well, when the frog would be put against the babos that had moisture in it, the frog would actually suck up the pus and the moisture inside of the babo. And then when it was being so much it couldn't handle the moisture anymore, it would just burst. So obviously that tactic was not very kind to the animals. You also could cover yourself in your own or others' waste. That's not too far off medically. Urine has an anti-venomous quality that people can treat, like jelly sting, jelly bites, jellyfish bites or stings from snakes. But it actually didn't do anything in this case. And obviously human waste wasn't going to do anything, especially our solid waste, because it's got lots and lots of bacteria in it. They would also place dead animals in the home because they believed the smell component. If there was a bad smell, then the evil disease would be attracted to the bad smell and not come to them. And the bloodletting, like I explained, where you exchange blood. And then leeches, which are animals that suck blood, and it can also help regenerate skin and help with healing. We actually do medically use leeches in modern times even, and it helps with keeping skin alive, but it wasn't going to do anything for the infection that started. Prevention was pretty far-fetched as well. Don't breathe the same air as a plague victim. Well, that's difficult, especially if it's a family member, and breathing is kind of necessary. Sit next to a fire. Again, they thought it would burn off. Keep the windows closed. Keep yourself kind of separated, which that was probably one of the best tactics. They thought if you attacked foreigners and people of different religions, like the Jews we learned about in our video, that they would be punished and not the people that were Christian or those that in their families, which we know has no validity at all. They did say keep the streets clean of dead bodies, which obviously that would be a good tactic. And carrying spices, herbs, flowers, things that smelled good around you, they thought wouldn't attract the evil disease. Again, the living the separate life, eating in moderation, seeing no one, those were actually probably one of the best strategies. Victims, they say here, like art actually flourished a lot in the Black Death. It's kind of interesting sometimes when things are really sorrowful and very much negative going on, that you sometimes have an idea of people wanting to be able to do some outlet of their creative energy, like with this artwork. A victim ate lunch with their friends and dinner with their ancestors.